If you can imagine that life is like a sculpture, and if life is like a sculpture, then work and sleep are the plaster. Work and sleep is the foundation with which to build upon. In other words, work and sleep either replenish or take away the base energy that you need to produce any other output. More on that coming up on Simply by Being today. Stay tuned. So do you resonate with any of these things? Maybe you have a hard time sticking to anything at a designated time. Perhaps you have issues developing a routine, sticking to a routine. Perhaps your routine may even be too linear. We'll talk more about that. You're very behind on things you want to do, things like creative projects, things that, maybe you really feel passionate about. Maybe you're trying to get to sleep, but you say that your mind is just too active. You sense and feel that your mind is just too active to go to sleep. And maybe because you're having a hard time getting to sleep or may have insomnia, you're having a hard time getting your work done. That could also be an issue. Perhaps you're even just going through the motions at this point where you're no longer even seeking fulfillment because you feel that what is there in front of you is normal. And so that also is an issue, because if you're no longer seeking fulfillment at the risk of losing normal, then that's an issue, especially if that normal is unhealthy. So before we dive in, one thing I want to make sure to do is define work. So work, what I'm really saying with work is survival-based output, essentially. So whatever you are doing to create whatever you're doing to create survival needs, however you're providing for your survival needs is what I mean by work. I want to make sure that that doesn't get mucked up with creative work, your own personal projects. That's different, okay? Let me ask you this. How much do you really think that you can work in a day? And before you say 8 hours, what's really important to think about is how much can you work in a day up to the point where you start to feel it maybe in your body. You might feel it in your shoulders, or you might feel it in different parts of your body. Just different cues of the stress level becoming unnecessary, or something in your body that tells you it's time to stop. There are some different cues. But I will say this. I think that a lot of people just work right past that. And my question is, how healthy is that for you really, if you work right past even when your body is telling you something different, when your body is telling you, no, I have to stop. And that's, I think, why we have a lot of physical and mental health issues, is because we force ourselves to work past an amount of time that is actually good for your body or not, because we're so based on the extrinsic value of, well, this is what people around me say that is normal. And so if you're really thinking about an essential element of this stuff, of this takeaway, is that what you're doing is you're taking away extrinsic value. It's no longer about what people are saying. Like, this is, an 8-hour work day is the optimal work day. And if you can't work 8 hours a day, then you must be lazy. It doesn't really make sense. When you're listening to your body, that no longer makes sense. So that's something you should totally throw out of the window. So for example, me, as a highly sensitive person, I'm only able to work up to about 4, give or take, 4 or 5 hours a day. And what I mean by that is if I'm working straight from one thing to the next, if it's an uninterrupted line of time, then yes, about 4 to 5 hours, with an obvious 15-minute break or something in between, right? That's as much as I can do. If the work is intellectually stimulating, then I might be able to go longer. It just depends. And something I've noticed also is that it's best for me to work later in the day, because at the top of my day, I prefer to do my creative projects. I prefer to do all of my personal projects then. And then at that point, it's like, okay, now I have the energy to be able to do whatever else. At that point, it's like, okay, I have the energy to be able to move forward and work on some more survival related things. You have a question of, how do you know? Like, how do I know that I can only work from about 4 to 5 hours a day? Well, it's all about the listening to your body, just like I said before. What happens to me is my shoulders get really achy, like my shoulders get pretty achy, and things just feel weird. It's like very obvious that it's like, okay, you've talked to enough people. So it's the social energy, all of it. Like, you've talked to enough people today, you've done enough of this today, time to get some downtime for yourself. So the big takeaway here is that a 9-to-5 job is simply not for everyone. And I mean, you might know that already. However, you'd be surprised at how many people try to fit into this 9-to-5 work construct and then expect themselves to have enough time to do something else, when that is not an appropriate job model for them. It's just not an appropriate work model for them, that they need something a little bit more nonlinear. And so if your body is desiring a structure that is much more nonlinear, then forcing yourself into linear processes will not work, and everything that spans out of that will yield undesirable results. Which is why it's very important to me to say that nonlinear people might prefer to be entrepreneurs or freelance workers, things like that. It's just easier because then you're a nonlinear person being able to make your own schedule, have that freedom. That's very, very helpful. So thanks so much for listening today. Since this category seemed to go pretty long, I decided to divide work and sleep into 2 different videos. So if you have any questions about how any of this pertains to your situation, book a free session with me and let's talk about it. As you know, research does get better with a bigger sample size. And so please contribute to better research and let me know how these ideas work out for you in the comments below. And lastly, a reminder to please like and subscribe so it can get out to the people who really need it. Thanks so much and have a great